When it comes to extreme comfort for the road or extreme handling for the trail, it's hard to beat the benefits of full suspension electric bikes.
Hey guys, Micah here with Electrek.
Today I'm showing you my top 5 full suspension electric bikes I've tested for summer of 2020.
Let's check it out.
First on the list is the Fray Ex Pro, which is a dual battery, full suspension electric bike designed for serious off-road riding. I'm by no means a highly skilled trail or downhill rider, but the Fray EX has absolutely been helping me up my game. It features super high-end suspension, including a RockShox Lyric fork and RockShox Deluxe rear shock. Combine that nice suspension with the Magura MT5E 4-piston hydraulic disc brakes clamping down on 203mm rotors, which, by the way, are my absolute favorite e-bike brakes, and the Fray EX has some seriously nice specs to brag about. But the key to making this e-bike so awesome is its Bafang M620 Ultra motor, which puts out around 1.5 kilowatts of power and an insane 160 newton meters of torque. This thing pulls like a tractor, but a tractor that you could ride up a wall. In fact, I'm doing all sorts of awesome riding that I never would have tried before, and that the high-end suspension and extreme power of the Fray EX has given me the confidence to try. Sure, I probably could have done a lot of this on a lesser e-bike, but it's the high-quality build of the Fray EX that gave me the confidence to even attempt it and show myself what I could do. When you're on the street, you can really open that motor up. Thanks to the mid-drive setup, you get power through the bike gears, and you can keep it low-geared for torque or high-geared for speed. At the top end, I can hit around 36 or 37 miles an hour, which is around 60 kilometers per hour, and that's flat ground speed, which is pretty nuts. And before we move on, the last thing I want to note about the Fray EX is that the Pro model here comes with an option for 2 batteries. One of those is hidden in the down tube, and the other is piggybacking on top. Together, that adds up to 1.5 kilowatt hours of capacity and equals an entire afternoon of riding trails without ever having to stop and charge. This is just an incredible e-bike that you can ride just about anywhere, street or trails, and have an awesome time on while pushing it hard thanks to those high-spec components. Of course, those high-spec components and the dual batteries and the gigantic motor don't come cheap, ballooning the bike's price up to about $4,000 for the top-end model. But if you're looking for a high-quality electric mountain bike that can hang with the best, the Fray EX should be on your list like it is on mine. And don't worry, that's the most expensive bike on this list. They all come cheaper from here. Next up, we have the Super Monarch All-Wheel Drive 1000. This flamboyant beast of an e-bike rocks a pair of 500-watt motors that combine to give 1000 watts of all-wheel drive off-roading fun. And whether you're using the bike to hit trails or just sticking to the street, the full suspension will make sure your ride is as good as it can be. Up front, we have a GT Mark adjustable air suspension fork, and in the rear, we're looking at a D&M adjustable air suspension shock. Neither of these are top-end parts, but they're both quite good and do everything we need for a recreational full suspension e-bike like this. With 2 motors providing all-wheel drive at 1000 watts of power, riders can burn through a battery pretty quickly. That's why the Super Monarch actually comes with 2 batteries, to make sure you can keep putting on the miles. There's one on the down tube and one on the rear rack. It's also got extra wide fat tires on the bike, which are just as good at rolling over curbs on the street as they are at hitting obstacles on the trail. In case you're wondering, yes, it comes in other color options too, and so if you don't like the screaming orange, then you can go with red or black. But come on, when you have an e-bike as ridiculous as this, you gotta lean into it, man. The only major downside to the Super Monarch All-Wheel Drive 1000 is its weight, at just over 90 pounds. That's a seriously heavy bike, and it means you might want to have a friend help you lift it up onto your car rack, if you can find a rack rated for it. Instead, I skipped the rack altogether and used the large battery capacity to ride straight to my favorite trails. I can hit around 33 miles an hour or 53 kilometers per hour on the street without burning up too much battery on the way there. Then I slow it down and enjoy my trail rides with more than enough capacity to make it all the way back home. All in all, it's a crazy e-bike, but worth the $3,495 price for the sheer power and utility of this all-wheel drive, full suspension, dual battery e-bike. Coming in next is the Mountain to Sea, or M2S, M600 FSAT, a full suspension, all-terrain electric mountain bike with a powerful mid-drive motor. You guys remember that crazy 1.5 kilowatt Bafang Ultra motor from the beginning of this video? Well, this motor isn't quite as powerful, but it's just one step below the Ultra motor in Bafang's lineup. This is the Bafang M600, and it's still a powerhouse that puts out 120 Newton meters of torque. In fact, some people actually prefer this motor since it's plenty powerful, but it's a bit easier on the bike parts. With 120 Newton meters of torque, you can still tackle just about any obstacle that comes your way. On the bike side of things, we're rocking D&M suspension, Tektro Auriga hydraulic disc brakes on 180mm rotors, and Shimano Alivio transmission. You also get a built-in headlight, something you don't find on all electric mountain bikes. The M2S M600 FSAT is also more affordable than a lot of high-power, full-suspension electric mountain bikes at $2,999. It's not quite as fast as the other two bikes we've seen so far, topping out at around 25 miles an hour or 40 kilometers per hour, but that's plenty for most trail riders and works just fine for bike lane riding. If you've been looking for a full-suspension electric mountain bike with a powerful mid-drive motor, but don't want something quite as excessive as the Fray EX or the Super Monarch, then the M2S M600 FSAT could be right up your alley. Next up, Fray is back on the list a second time, yet with a completely different type of full suspension electric bike. The Fray CC is a full suspension commuter bike, words you don't often hear together, but boy does the suspension on this bike turn it into a great ride. Up front we've got a RockShox Recon fork, complemented by a RockShox Monarch shock hidden in the frame on the rear. Not the craziest downhill e-bike suspension by any means, but more than enough for a commuter bike that you can definitely take shortcuts through the air on. I absolutely love using full suspension e-bikes as commuter bikes. You don't find full suspension on commuters often, partly for the cost and partly for the added weight. But with e-bikes, the added weight doesn't really cause much of a penalty while riding, since the motor can overcome any additional pounds. And speaking of the motor, yep, that's right, we're back with a Fray classic, the 1.5 kilowatt Bafang Ultra motor with its 160 stump-pulling Newton meters of torque. Oh man, I love this motor. If you've got a hilly commute, or you just want to get up to speed quickly, this is the motor that will get you there. I have yet to see a hill it cannot climb. And when matched with the commuter-oriented Fray CC frame and that RockShox suspension, it turns this into the ultimate urban assault e-bike. The price is even more than fair at $2,980, and I didn't even mention that you're getting a large 840 watt-hour battery, high-end Magura MT5E 4-piston hydraulic disc brakes, a Shimano M6000 transmission, etc. This is a truly high-end full-suspension electric commuter bike at a price that can put similar spec'd bikes from companies like Reese and Muller to shame. I absolutely recommend this bike anytime I hear someone is looking for a full-suspension, powerful commuter e-bike. It just ticks all of my boxes. Lastly, we're going to feature something that is entirely different, yet is still a really fun full suspension e-bike. This little thing is the Fido L2. This e-bike actually spans a few categories. Sure, it's a full suspension e-bike, but it's also a folding e-bike, and it's also kind of a moped style bike, and it's even something of a utility bike, with that rear seat on it that doubles as a rack. It's small enough that you can really only carry a child back there, but it's still a nice little addition. As far as suspension goes, the Fido L2 has dual coilovers in the rear that are pretty good, and a front suspension fork up front that's alright. Together they work pretty well though, and combine with a suspension saddle to give you a very nice ride. The wheels are cast instead of spoked, which means you never have to deal with broken spokes or adjust spoke tension over time. That rear wheel houses a 350 watt motor that is absolutely putting out more than 350 watts. The first clue is that it's running a 48 volt electrical system, which is definitely going to provide more power than a typical 36 350 watt unit, and the second clue is that it takes off like a bat out of hell and can climb hills that you would not have expected. And speaking of that 48 volt battery, it's 20 amp hours in capacity, meaning you've got almost a full kilowatt hour of capacity here, which is pretty nuts. 50 miles or 80 kilometers of range is totally doable, meaning many people could probably get away with charging this bad boy just once a week or less, depending on their commute. When it comes to commutes, this is obviously an urban e-bike. It's got bike lane written all over it. The top speed is also pretty slow, at just 15 miles an hour or 25 kilometers per hour, meaning it's spec'd more like a European or Asian e-bike. But if that's fast enough for you and you just want a simple and affordable full suspension e-bike for city riding, the Fido L2 has you set at around $750. At that price, this thing is a steal. And that does it for my top 5 favorite full suspension e-bikes for summer of 2020. We had a diverse collection of e-bikes here that are sure to suit a wide range of riders. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you here next time.